So I think the best way to start this video off is with hello. My name is Brian, and if you've never seen any of my content, the TLDR is that I make video game content here on YouTube, and I also do stand-up comedy. Now, recently, one of my jokes, one of my bits that I've posted online has drawn a lot of attention, and people are saying that it's offensive and it's racist. And I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about it. Now, we're going to completely ruin the joke because whenever you break down jokes and explain them, that obviously kills the root of the joke. But the target of the joke isn't a racist joke. It is to make fun of racism, and that is what this video is ultimately going to be about. Now, it's perfectly fine if you don't like the joke. It's perfectly fine if you don't like me as a comedian. In fact, that is what happens when you make something and you put it out into the world. Interpretation from the viewer is really everything at that point. And so I don't fault anybody who feels like this isn't a good joke, and that's perfectly fine. That's a fair review for the joke itself. And so I just want to kind of put that out there. Also, as a few notes on this video, it's not going to be monetized. I'm not trying to make money off of drama. I just wanted to sit down today and talk to you guys about it. Now, I do have a couple bullet points, and this video is not going to be edited, but I do have a couple of bullet points over here that I'd like to kind of point to just to make sure that I try to stay on task. I don't want this to be a long video. I hopefully will be in and out, and then ideally you can then make up for yourself, your own mind, whether you feel this, is a good joke or a bad joke or racist joke, or a joke that actually targets the idea of racism, because that's at least was the original intent as I wrote it. And overall, I feel a lot of people actually pick up on that intent, but we'll talk about that. So first things first, like some of the negative reviews that I get as a comedian are that I'm not funny. That's completely fair. Like at the end of the day, like I haven't been doing stand-up comedy. I'm coming up on 2 years, here in a couple of months. And yeah, it's very possible that this joke is not well crafted enough so that it essentially does everything that I believe it to be doing, but that's just a part of the growing process. But that being said, is the other reviews that I get is, they state that I'm not this comedian or that comedian or this famous comedian or that famous comedian, and all that is absolutely true. I am none of those things, nor do I claim to be. I'm an amateur comedian. I've made a little bit of money in stand-up, and it's a lot of fun, and I highly encourage anybody who's on the fence about doing so to get involved in it. It is such I think a beautiful art form, but that's just my personal review of it. But anyway, I'd like to take this opportunity. The joke in question is the one that I have pinned on my X profile. If you guys want to go see for yourself, it's currently pinned. At some point, maybe I'll get some new jokes and get some new material filmed that I feel like I want to share with the world. Now, this joke, I have a warning on it. If you're easily offended, this is probably not going to be content for you. And I think essentially, ideally, and at least the thought process behind that is to let people just move on. You don't need to watch my content. You don't need to support me. This is just something that I do because I feel like it adds value. I feel like it brings joy. And the reviews that I look to are the laughs that I get in the room and doing stand-up in a comedy club. I think it's important to note that I do not subscribe to the idea that just saying it's a joke is some form of defense, right? Like there's plenty of people who say horrible things and then they try to justify it with it's just a joke. The difference is that the joke that I told is in a stand-up club at a comedy club. And that is essentially a big, I think, difference in that. I'm performing something. I'm not going around stating something like as a fact. And then when people get mad, then I'm like, in defense. There's a key difference. And I want to make sure that people understand that clearly. Now, the idea here, the joke, the target of it, let's break it down. Let's ruin it in this case. The target is kind of the concept of racism, and it goes a little bit into classism. Now, what I state is, like you love your kids, but you want them, you like them the further they are away with you, much like minorities. Now, you might feel, in that response, but the target isn't any specific group in this case. The target is the idea, that idea alone. The fact that people actually think that, and that is not acceptable. And to marry this, and the reason why I join it to the concept of the love that I have for my children is the idea that, do people think that I hate my children? An idea, and I hope you watched that and you said, of course, this guy doesn't hate his children. No, I don't hate anybody. In fact, I'm forbidden from hating. Like that's just a part of my religion. I'm Catholic, and that's essentially just kind of the faith that I practice, and that's what I try to live out in the daily life. Now, you might then ask yourself, like, well, why make the joke at all. And overall, I think there is and this is, I don't know if I right word for it, maybe a need. But there's been this fear, this idea, that's been proposed, and it's been proposed about this joke, is that because of the color of my skin, that I shouldn't be able to touch this. This is a forbidden zone. This is something that we should not talk about. And I find that worrisome. I find that worrisome for my future and for my kids. And so the target of the joke is the fact that idea is absurd. It takes the absurdist view of that, and the fact that there are people who think that, and then is to make that kind of point. And I go on, and there's other, like, I have other tags that go off of that, but then to turn it back around at me, making fun of the color of my skin and how I look. And one key tag is the idea of gentrification, which is a real problem that people face every day. And that is essentially kind of the idea. That's how it is all constructed. But again, the review could be, it's a bad joke, it's not funny, and all of that's perfectly acceptable. But I just want to push back on the idea that it is a racist joke, but you're welcome to disagree with me on that too. We're just going to have to agree to disagree. Now, ideally, as a comedian, I will continue to improve. I'll continue to refine those different tags, but the goal is that I just want to try to put something beautiful and fun out in the world, and people did not, or some people did not, feel like this is one of those things. And to them, I just want to say I love you. I don't have any ill will to you. And in this case, like, if you are actively hurt by this, then yes, I do apologize to you for that, any kind of hurt that something that I made caused you. So hopefully that in and of itself, I think, is a good thing. Let me just make sure I'm checking over my notes. Like, again, I said this wasn't going to be edited. I just want to make sure I hit everything. Okay, I do have one note in and of this case, especially because, again, tying this back to the kids, a personal belief of mine. I believe hate is taught. I think that is a taught action that people have to do. Having children, in this case, I have 6 children. None of them are born with hate in their heart. And also, my world has always been, and I'm so blessed by this fact, very beautifully multicultural. Like I said, I'm Catholic. I have never just been in any world where I sit with anybody who just only looks like me. And I love that aspect. It's a very beautiful thing. Something that for me, I've never been the victim of a racism. And I know that it's real and it's disgusting and it's horrible. And that's, I think, and again, you don't need to agree with like my logic and reasoning here, but I think that's a big part of why I think making dark humor jokes is important, is to highlight their absurdity, to have that thought process that, goes off in someone's mind in that regards. And I said this also has that classist aspect, because I can also make tags about, poverty in this case, like, oh, well, like, I'm not racist, I just don't like you if you're poor and things like that. And that none of that's true as to who I am, but that's true to the comedy and the performance of that. And that's the whole point of it. Now, I've hopefully killed the joke and hopefully you've gotten something good out of this. Again, that's the hope of it, but I'll let you guys obviously always be the judge of that, because once I put something out into the world, it's up for the world to decide what they feel about it and where I can improve upon that. And ideally, maybe that's perhaps the best thing that you guys, if you feel up to it, to offer in this case, is to offer how can that joke be improved. I'm always listening. In fact, hopefully you guys feel that when I respond to comments and when I talk to people that it ends up going over pretty well. Because again, yeah, like part of who I am and what I believe is it's all rooted about love, and that you need to love everybody. And that's just what I believe to a core. You don't have to believe me. I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I feel like actions speak louder than words. And I think essentially the key difference here is I'm not walking around the street performing comedy for people. I do that as a part of a special venue that people can come and see. And I have some upcoming shows that I'll be sharing with you guys soon as we get the flyers and more, if you're curious about checking that out. Again, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully you got something good out of this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.